When you think of the giants ruling the tech industry, you picture the visionaries behind the products we touch every day: Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. You think of the platforms used by billions of people, built by founders like Mark Zuckerberg or the teams at Google. But there is a massive company missing from that mental list. Broadcom is currently the ninth largest tech company in the world, with a market cap of $570 billion. Since 2009, their stock has grown 74 times over. To put that in perspective, even Apple has only grown 32 times in that same period, while Google grew 13 times and Meta grew 10 times. They achieved this growth by positioning themselves at the center of how data actually moves across the planet. Broadcom estimates that 99% of all internet traffic across the entire world passes through at least one of their chips. This public invisibility has allowed Broadcom to grow into a massive corporation without the general scrutiny faced by its peers, building a market position so total that the world's most famous tech companies are now entirely reliant on their hardware. Broadcom's history begins in 1961 as HP Associates, a division of Hewlett-Packard that built the high-end radar technology used by the U.S. military. They established a pedigree for cutting-edge hardware early on, with their oscillators famously being used by Disney for audio production. By the 1990s, while the rest of the tech world was rushing to build the first websites, UCLA professor Henry Samueli and his student Henry Nicholas decided to build the infrastructure instead. They founded the modern Broadcom in 1991, focusing on hardware-integrated circuits. They didn't have the name recognition of their parent company, but they had an invention that would change how the world connected. Internet was a slow trickle of 28.8 kilobits per second. Broadcom's cable solutions were 1,000 times faster, allowing the internet to move through TV lines. By focusing on the hardware shovels of the internet gold rush, Broadcom ensured that no matter which website won the software war, they would own the physical bedrock of the network. Their 1998 IPO was a massive success, making the founders centimillionaires and expanding the company's operations into 15 different countries. But as the stock price soared, the leadership sought to increase their personal gains through a massive scandal known as options backdating. Executives forged paperwork to make it appear as though they had received stock grants 5 years earlier, when the shares were 50 times cheaper than their current price. The fallout cost investors over $2 billion in stock dilution. While the founders walked away as deca-billionaires after the cases against them were dropped, the company's reputation was permanently changed. This era knocked a shift in Broadcom's corporate identity. They moved away from being seen as pure inventors and began to be viewed as a cynical force focused on aggressive financial growth. In 2015, the company underwent a massive reset when Avago, the corporate successor to that original 1960s HP division, purchased Broadcom for $37 billion. The modern entity pivoted toward aggressive legal tactics, suing major streaming services and smart TV makers for patent infringement, in filings that judges characterized as massive overkill. They also began leveraging their hardware monopoly to impose restrictive contracts and exclusivity arrangements on their customers, who often have no other source for the chips they need. Because Broadcom controls the physical components required for internet access, they can act as a mandatory toll booth for the global economy, forcing even Fortune 500 companies into predatory agreements. Broadcom is now using the cash flow from its chip monopoly to aggressively expand into other sectors of the tech world. Their ambition was so large that they attempted a $105 billion hostile takeover of Qualcomm, a deal that was only stopped when blocked by the White House on security grounds. They shifted their focus to software, acquiring CA Technologies for nearly $19 billion and recently completing a $69 billion purchase of VMware. Their strategy mirrors the industrial conglomerates of the late 20th century: buy up established companies, cut costs, and maximize short-term financial extraction, even at the expense of the product's long-term health. Broadcom has built an empire that is essentially inescapable for the modern internet. Its future now depends on whether it can maintain this level of aggressive expansion, or if it will eventually grow so massive and complex that it fractures under its own internal weight.